Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to take those big, complex topics, all that policy jargon, and, well, boil it down to what you really need to know. And today, we're digging into something pretty major for European travel: the EU's new entry-exit system. You'll hear it called EES. Our plan is to get straight to the point. Who does EE actually affect? What new steps do travelers need to be aware of? And why is this launch, kicking off in October 2025, such a huge shift for the Schengen area?
Yeah, and maybe let's start with the biggest point right away. If you've heard this means new checks for everyone, let's clear that up. EES is very specific. It's mainly about upgrading security at the external borders and swapping old passport stamps for, well, mandatory digital registration, including biometrics, but mainly for non-EU nationals on short stays.
Right, that distinction feels really important. So if I'm, say, Danish and I'm flying from Copenhagen direct to Madrid, both in Schengen, am I suddenly going to face some new border control because of EES?
No, absolutely not. That core principle, freedom of movement inside the Schengen zone, it stays exactly the same. Your Copenhagen to Madrid trip, still no routine border checks. EES is all about managing who crosses the Schengen area's external border, think arriving from outside the EU.
Okay, let's break that down. Who exactly are we talking about when we say EES applies? And this external border thing, that's
hmm
like flying into Frankfurt from New York, right? Or maybe the Eurostar from London.
Exactly. That's the external border. And the system tracks third country nationals. Basically, anyone who isn't a citizen of an EU country or the EEA countries, Norway, Iceland, Liechtenstein, or Switzerland. So yeah, typically short-stay visitors, think tourists or business travelers from places like the US, the UK, Canada, Australia, that kind of thing. ES tracks when they enter, when they leave, making sure they stick to their allowed stay.
Gotcha. And the timing. This feels like it's been talked about for ages, lots of delays. What's the latest official word?
Okay, the date everyone's circling now is October 12th, 2025. That's when it's set to start operating.
Yeah.
But, and this is really key if you're planning travel around then, it's not like flipping a switch. They're planning a gradual, sort of phased rollout over 6 months. So it'll be progressively introduced until about early April 2026.
A 6-month rollout. Okay.
Yeah, it gives everyone, border police, airports, train operators, ferry companies, time to actually get the tech working smoothly, hopefully without, total gridlock at the borders on day one.
That makes sense. A transition period probably means some bumps in the road initially, but let's talk exemptions. You mentioned EU, EEA, Swiss citizens are out. Who else doesn't need to worry about EES registration?
All right, this is crucial. It's less about your passport sometimes and more about your status.
Yeah.
If you're a non-EU citizen, but you legally live in a Schengen country, you have a residence permit or a residence card. You're exempt.
Ah, okay. So my American friend living and working in Berlin with a German residence permit is fine,
Exactly.
but her cousin visiting from Chicago for 2 weeks.
Her cousin visiting is subject to EES because the system is really focused on tracking those short stays, the whole 90 days and any 180-day period rule. And importantly, this exemption also covers UK citizens who have residency rights under the Brexit withdrawal agreement if they have the proper residence document. Also, if you have a long-stay national visa, like a Type D visa for study or work, you're also excluded.
So fundamentally, EES is replacing the ink stamp in the passport for these short stay folks. No more squinting at faded stamps to figure out dates.
That's the core idea. It moves the tracking of how long you're allowed to stay that legal limit onto a central digital system. It should mean much clearer, consistent records.
Okay, this digital system needs data, and the big change seems to be biometrics. That sounds like where the friction might happen for travelers. What exactly are we talking about here?
Yes, biometrics are absolutely central to how EES works for security. For those third country nationals who need to register, it means providing two main things. First, a live facial image, basically, a photo taken right there at the border. And second, the system checks this against the photo already stored in your passport's chip. Standard stuff, really.
But it goes beyond just a photo, doesn't it? Especially for people from places like the UK or the US who don't need visas for short stays.
That's right. For those visa-exempt travelers, and yeah, that includes Americans, Canadians, Brits, Australians, many others, there's an extra step on their first entry under EES. They'll also need to provide 4 fingerprints.
4 fingerprints on the very first trip in. Okay, it sounds like it could take a bit of time, especially if things are busy or the machines are slow.
That's definitely the potential bottleneck everyone's watching, particularly during the initial rollout. And it's non-negotiable. If a traveler required to provide biometrics refuses, they'll be refused entry. Simple as that. It's a condition of entry now for short-stay visitors.
Right. So that first entry might be slower. Does it get faster after that? Do I have to do the fingerprint thing every single time I fly into, say, Paris?
No, thankfully.
Yeah.
That initial registration with the face scan and the 4 fingerprints, that creates your EES file. On subsequent trips, it should be much quicker. The system just needs to verify it's you again. It'll typically check just one biometric, and almost always that'll be your face via a camera against the file they already have. Much faster identity check.
Okay, that's good to know. What about holding on to this data? How long does the EU keep my fingerprints and photo on file?
There are clear rules. If you follow the rules you enter and leave within your allowed 9180 days, your data is kept for 3 years. This is mainly for security, helping law enforcement with serious crime or terrorism investigations if needed. But if the system flags you as having overstayed your welcome, then that data is kept for longer 5 years, actually. It creates a very clear digital record of movements and any breaches of the stay rules.
Okay, so we've established EES means new steps, mandatory biometrics for some, potentially longer processing first time around. The big question for many travelers is just, how bad will the queues be? Especially at busy airports or places like the Channel Tunnel.
Yeah, that's the million-euro question, isn't it? Everyone acknowledges that even adding, say, 30 seconds or a minute to process each third country national on their first visit could cause major backups at busy borders.
So what's being done to try and prevent total chaos?
The main strategy is infrastructure. Lots of investment is going into self-service kiosks for pre-registration. The idea is you do the initial data, capture the photo, the fingerprints at a machine before you even get to the border guard. You mentioned the channel crossings. The UK government, for example, put millions into funding these kinds of kiosks at places like St. Pancras for Eurostar, the Eurotunnel terminal in Folkestone, and the Port of Dover.
Ah, okay. So I might go to a kiosk first, do the biometric stuff there, and then the border guard just does a quicker check to confirm it's me and everything's okay.
That's the plan. The kiosk handles the more time-consuming data collection. The guard then focuses on the actual assessment and verification. An algorithm helps by comparing the live photo you just took with the one on your passport chip. It splits the workload, basically. And for airports, especially bigger ones, we're seeing lots of e-gates being installed. Think about Denmark. Copenhagen and Billund airports have put in quite a few. These e-gates are mostly for EU and Schengen citizens, though. They let eligible travelers just scan their passport and look at a camera for a quick automated check. It speeds things up for that group considerably.
Right, so EU and Schengen citizens over 18 can zip through the e-gates. What about families, say me traveling with my kids who are under 18?
Yeah, that's a key point. Even if you, as the parent, are eligible for e-gates, if you're traveling with children under 18, the whole family still needs to go to a manual booth with a border guard. The tech isn't quite there yet for reliably processing minors automatically alongside adults in that e-gate environment. So families should still expect the traditional queue, unfortunately.
Okay, good to know. Quick question for cruise fans. Let's say I take a cruise starting and ending in the UK, maybe Southampton. It stops in France for a day trip. Do I have to do the whole EES registration for that quick stop?
Generally, no. If your cruise starts and finishes outside the Schengen area, like your UK example, those short port calls usually don't trigger the full EES checks. You're not formally entering the Schengen territory for onward travel. The EES process really kicks in if you were, say, ending your cruise in a Schengen port like Barcelona and flying home from there, or starting a cruise within Schengen. But for those typical round-trip cruises with day stops, mostly exempt, thankfully, for the cruise lines and passengers.
Okay, let's zoom out a bit. EES is replacing the passport stamp, which was linked to that really confusing 9180-day rule for short-stay non-EU visitors. Why was that rule such a pain before?
Oh, it was notoriously tricky because it's a rolling 180-day period. It wasn't just 90 days per trip or per year. On any given day, you had to look back 180 days and make sure you hadn't spent more than 90 of those days inside Schengen. People genuinely needed spreadsheets sometimes to track it accurately. And border guards had to manually count stamps, which could be faded or unclear. It led to mistakes, inconsistent enforcement, people overstaying by accident.
Right, because it was just hard to calculate reliably on the fly.
Exactly. So a big plus for EES is that this calculation becomes automatic and electronic. The system knows exactly when you entered and exited across the entire Schengen area. It calculates your remaining allowed stay instantly. And they're also planning a secure website or app where travelers themselves can check how many days they have left.
Yeah.
That kind of transparency just wasn't possible before.
Now, ES often gets mixed up with another acronym, EES. They're both part of this big digital border upgrade, right? But they do different things.
Yes, they're related but distinct. Think of them as two layers. EES, the entry-exit system we've been talking about, happens at the border. It records your entry and exit, collects biometrics on arrival, and tracks your stay duration. That's starting October 2025. ETS, the European Travel Information and Authorization System, is different. It's a pre-travel authorization. It's for people from those visa-exempt countries like the US, Canada, UK. Before you even travel, you'll need to apply online for EDS authorization. It's basically a security pre-screening. It'll cost €7 and last for 3 years. Think of it like the American ESTA system. EDS is expected to launch after EES, probably late 2026.
Okay, so ETS is like getting permission before you fly. ES is the check and tracking when you arrive and leave. Makes sense. What actually happens if EES catches someone overstaying? What are the consequences?
Well, because it's automated, the system will flag it pretty much immediately. And the consequences can be quite serious. It typically leads to what's called a return decision, basically, in order to leave. It can also mean mandatory deportation and, significantly, an entry ban for the Schengen area, often for several years, maybe 3 years or more. That's a major problem for future travel. You can appeal, especially if there were exceptional circumstances like a documented medical emergency, but an overstay automatically puts you on a watch list.
So it really tightens up enforcement of those stay limits.
Yeah, absolutely. It moved the whole burden of proof and calculation from confusing stamps and manual checks onto a clear, centralized digital platform.
That sums it up well. EES is really this focused digital tool aimed at strengthening external border security and making that 9180-day rule crystal clear for non-EU short-stay visitors. And just to reiterate, if you're an EU or Schengen citizen, your usual travel patterns within the zone, largely unaffected. But if you are visiting short-term from the UK, the US, Canada, or similar countries, get ready for that new biometric process starting October 12th, 2025. Your first entry might just take a bit longer.
Exactly. And maybe here's something to think about as this rolls out over those 6 months. The whole point is this shiny new tech kiosks, algorithms making things efficient. But we know tech can glitch and huge queues can build up. Border authorities still have the power, in exceptional circumstances, to basically just wave people through to manage a crisis. So the system designed to replace physical proof sometimes has to be bypassed during the messy transition. How important does keeping your own proof, like old boarding passes or ticket stubs showing when you left, remain, even as the digital system is supposed to make all that obsolete? It's an interesting little clash between the digital promise and, well, the practical reality of getting millions of people across borders.